Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. I'm your host, Sam Lance, and I'm joined by Jackson Bezdek once again. Jackson, it's over. The season is over. We're done. Kansas basketball loses to Gonzaga in the second round, and it's over, just like that.
Yep. It was that might have been the most I was so hopeful at halftime and then just completely destroyed after the game ever. But yeah, it was the second half was nice. Gave me some time to collect on the season and get my final thoughts in there. But yeah, it's always the worst day of the year is when Kansas loses in March. It's the worst day of the year every year.
Yep, Kansas bounced in the second round to Gonzaga. We'll go over kind of that Samford game today. We'll go over that Gonzaga game a little bit, and then we'll kind of just evaluate, what went wrong for Kansas this season in 2023-24. All of that coming up next year on The Hum, a Kansas Hoop podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. We're going to now kind of break down these two games here. Kansas in the first round of the NCAA Tournament playing against 13 seed Samford, and then Gonzaga. Just starting with the Samford game, honestly, Jackson, in that second half, I thought Kansas was just going to coast to this win. They were up 21 points with about 16 minutes left, 15 minutes left. And then the Bulldogs just started making every three in sight. They actually ended up hitting a three with like 20 seconds left to come within 1 point. And mind you, Kansas was up 20 in the same half. Samford within 1 point with about 20 seconds to go. They foul Timberlake. Timberlake hits the two free throws to go up three, and then Samford can't hit their final look. They foul Furphy. It's ball game, but man, that game, Jackson, was very sweaty, and I bet you it took a lot out of the players.
Yeah, the second half when Kansas is up 21, I kind of figured it would get to like 12 or 14, maybe even 10, Like Samford had to make some shots at some point, and they were still playing fast. They weren't going to stop, But holy cow, what we got was kind of ridiculous. I mean, the thing with like Samford is a team that presses like all game, right? That's not necessarily going to change when they're down 20. That's honestly more reason to put up the pressure. And I don't know, Kansas just kind of, it didn't even look like they ran out of gas. It just kind of looked like they ran out of XP and they just had they had no more boosts left, and Samford just kind of almost ran them out of the gym.
Yeah, it didn't help that Kansas was playing in like a pretty much a road environment in that game.
Yeah, that was
not only was the Samford fans going wild, I guarantee you that every single fan in that building who wasn't a KU fan is rooting for Samford in that game. And you could hear it on the TV. Like, you could hear it. Those fans were really loud. But yeah, I mean, that game, we knew coming in that it wasn't a great matchup for KU, and for them to handle everything so well and then just completely crumble. Like, that Samford game was almost the story of the season right there. How many times this year, Jackson, has Kansas had a huge lead in the second half and then it just absolutely crumbles into nothing? This happened with this team quite a few times this year, I feel.
Yeah, and on top of that, how many times have they lost a game simply for allowing the other team to just shoot as many threes as they want? Samford was the only team in the first round to shoot more threes than twos, and they also shot a higher percentage from three than they did two. So and we knew that was going to be the case coming in, and it's the same thing with like the Oakland kid, right? How does what he does? How does Kentucky allow him to get off 15 three-pointers? Because Kentucky's a really bad defensive team. That's why.
20
so on Jackson. This side, what?
He shot 20, not 15. He shot 20 threes.
I don't know why I said 15, but yeah, 20. Same thing. Like, they're a bad defensive team. So Kansas, who's supposed to be a really good defensive team, top 10 in the country coming into this game, how do they slip up so much and allow Samford to just chuck and chuck and chuck? It's because Samford can play for 40 minutes, super fast paced and not get tired. because they have 11 guys who want to do it. In Kansas, when you only have 7 guys, you do a great job in the first half. It's so hard to keep up with that in the second half with a team that plays the way Samford does. And yeah, the energy in that building was kind of ridiculous. Honestly, like there was that Samford totally fed off of that, and Kansas did the other way too. Kansas has been terrible on the road all year. I mean, crap.
Yeah, Kansas was able to survive the Samford upset.
Yeah, we did win.
Kansas did win this game. Yes, it was very sweaty, but Kansas did win this game. I want to shout out Nick Timberlake real quick for his performance in this game. He was 5 of 8, 3 of 6 from the field, 19 points. We talked about it after seeing him in Kansas City, just how shaken up he was out after that loss to Cincinnati. Seeing him do that was really positive. So shout out Nick Timberlake. Really, all of the starters in this game played pretty well. I mean, Hunter Dickinson, 19 and 20 with 5 assists. You're going to take that every day. DeJuan had 13 and 7 with 4 rebounds. Furphy was 16 and 8 in his first NCAA tournament game. And KJ doing what he does, 20.6 assists and 4 rebounds. That 5 played pretty darn well. They couldn't guard anybody, but they played pretty well offensively in that game. You beat Samford. The game ends, Jackson, at like 11:30 midnight our time, right? Thursday. Then KU has to play on Saturday at 2:15. Pretty rough turnaround. And Bill Self kind of mentioned that a couple times. What is just your opinion on that turnaround for Kansas? A Kansas team with no depth, Jackson.
Yeah, not great. I mean, I thought the scheduling this year with game times and choosing to play the Salt Lake City games first on Saturday was really, really bizarre for me.
Yeah.
Because that just kind of screws up everybody else the rest of the day. I don't know. There were a lot of things that were weird, but just specifically KU's turnaround, that sucks, man. Like, that's a thing in the tournament. Obviously, you're going to play within a day or two, but that's less than 48 hours. That's actually way less than 48. That's less than 40 hours. And you got there's altitude in Salt Lake City that's not in Kansas, obviously. There's a lot of different parts that factor into that. And I don't know. I don't necessarily think it led to how the second half played out. I just think Kansas was tired in general. Just a whole season of only playing 7 guys, such huge wear and tear on them. Yeah, I just that should never happen, right? From a scheduling standpoint, like that should just never happen. Don't play the West Coast games at 10 a.m. like their time. That the game before Kansas, I don't remember what it was. It was breakfast ball for them in Utah. Why is that? I don't know. Whatever.
It's the networks, Jackson. I don't think the NCAA really has much control over it. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure
whoever's in charge of it did a bad job this year. That's the point.
We'll get into this Gonzaga game a little bit. Kansas was up 44-43 at halftime. Gonzaga missed a free throw to cash my first half money line. I was pretty excited. But
oh yeah, I knew a couple of that.
Kansas, really, after that first half, like, I don't know about you, Jackson, but I was sitting there thinking, like, damn, like, we can't guard anybody, but I'm feeling great about this. Like, everybody was making shots. Gonzaga wasn't playing all that well, to be honest. Like, we were getting cooked in the pick and roll a little bit in that first half, but like that was really it. And then the switch just flipped in the second half for Kansas. They couldn't shoot anymore. Gonzaga, they went on a 20-2 run. Kansas was up 47-43, and the Gonzaga went on a 20-2 run at the beginning of the second half. They took a 63-49 lead. And honestly, it was over right then and there. Once Gonzaga took that big lead and they just kept it going down the stretch. It really seemed like Kansas never stood a chance in this game. And you kind of mentioned it. This was the self-quote. At halftime, I thought we were in decent shape, except for, my guys were gassed. Everybody knew that at the end of the first half. I mean, my guys were gassed. I hadn't had very many times where you take a guy out and he's sitting through a 3-minute timeout and I say, go back in. And he says, I need a little more time. Kansas played with 8 dudes, 7 dudes. They were gassed. They were.
That first half was giving me such instant classic, round of 32, great game vibes. It was a shootout. Both teams were executing really well. And then just like Johnny comes out, misses his first 3 shots in the second half. Gonzaga hits 2 of their first 3, and it's over from there. It's just over from there. And you can feel it early as Kansas is running offense. Like they don't have the guys to keep up with what Gonzaga is doing. And Gonzaga, their offense is crazy good. This is how they've played all year. All the big games they've played, thinking back to like November and December, back before conference play started, all of their really close games were really high scoring too. So that's just how Gonzaga plays. And the reason to pick Gonzaga over Kansas before the game is just Kansas is not going to be able to keep up with Gonzaga. They were barely able to keep up with Samford. Like they kept up with them for 30 minutes. And then they kept up with Gonzaga for 20 minutes. Gonzaga is a better team than Samford. They play really similar. It was not a good matchup from the beginning.
And Gonzaga was playing their best ball towards the end of the season too. Still are playing their best ball. So that was tough for KU to kind of run into that. But yeah, honestly, this game was just like, the first half, like I legitimately am like, yeah, I'm with you, Jackson. I was like, this is going to be a great game. And I expected down the stretch, like, okay, like this is going to be a good March game. Man, that second half was rough. It was rough. I don't know about you. I didn't watch really once it got to a certain point. I did not watch the rest of that game. I just couldn't do it.
I kind of hate watched, just so I could like really feel the pain of what the game was. I wanted to experience all of it and really just hurt myself. So I watched every second. Yeah, I mean, it's so weird. I've never, like, I was confident at halftime. Like there wasn't any second doubt that what we saw happen was going to happen. Like that took me way by surprise. And I don't know, it didn't seem to take the players by surprise that much. Just that Gonzaga team's good, man. I mean, they can make like that. Purdue's going to have to keep up with them too. Gonzaga. I don't know if Gonzaga has a, Edie answer, but offensively, man, like Gonzaga can absolutely hang with Purdue. And, thinking about Kansas playing Purdue, that's it's like the Hunter Edie thing. Yeah. But just the rest of the guys on the court is just not even a competition. That was so weird, Sam. Why'd they play so well? I wish they would have just mailed it in from the tip and we could have gotten over with it. But no, they had to give me some hope. Golly.
If you want a good laugh, Jackson, look up the YouTube video, Bill Self's all-time atrocity of coaching versus Gonzaga. Oh. I watched this video yesterday and Kansas had no idea what they were doing in the pick and roll against Gonzaga. That is in my opinion why Kansas lost this game. Like Kansas was lost in the pick and roll. Hunter Dickinson was lost in the pick and roll.
There were multiple times where I just was like, oh, he just lost him. Like talking about El Marco or Nick.
There were times where KU players literally just didn't do anything about the screen.
Yeah, it was bad.
Well, Kansas season ended to Gonzaga, 89-68. The Jayhawks fall. Another blowout loss for this team this season. God. And now it comes to this question, Jackson. We discussed KU's flaws all year. We've been here. We've been talking about this Kansas team all season long. Should we have seen this coming? Should we have seen this coming for this Kansas team? The depth, the shooting, it's been a problem all year long. Why didn't we know this was going to happen, Jackson?
It's tough to say without McCullough playing in the tournament because this team's obviously way different with him. But it's not like the shooting would get way better with Kevin. And it's only one guy. It doesn't solve the depth problem because all you're doing is plugging him in and moving Timberlake to the bench, which hurts the depth problem, honestly, in my opinion. It is, I mean, I think we did see this coming, honestly. Like, it was always the talk of if this team was going to make a run, it was going to be just because the ball bounced their way. Bill Self found a way down within 5 minutes down the stretch of these games. And the experience of Dickinson and McCullough and DeJuan and KJ was going to be able to matter. None of those factors were ever able to matter in that second half against Gonzaga. Bill was never able to really lock in and coach because the game was never close. It just, I don't know. I think the depth is the one thing you walk away from. The shooting, yeah, but the depth is, I mean, we'll talk about it in a little bit. That will, like, Self will refuse to have this happen to him again. He will have 9 starters on next year's team, no doubt.
This is my thing. I'm just kind of thinking about the trajectory of the whole season, right? Just kind of how it went, just step by step. This team with Kevin McCullough, the team that I saw go 12-1, 11-1 in the non-conference, the team that I saw beat Tennessee, beat Kentucky, like that team, I think in this tournament, I think it's at least getting to Purdue if we're a 4 seed. I think if, the whole team stays healthy, Kansas isn't even a 4 seed. We're a 2 or 3. But I don't know. Like, I really feel like that the team that Kansas had to start the season with Kevin, with El Marco in the starting lineup, with having a Timberlake or a Furphy off the bench, if Kansas could have stuck with that, then maybe we're talking about, a different story if El Marco would have been able to develop. But yeah, from pretty much Oklahoma, like once Kevin McCullough started not being himself, like you could see that this was coming for this Kansas team. And I will mention that we knew this was coming all along because KU lost in Manhattan. And what has Kansas now done? The last 5 times Kansas has lost in Manhattan, second round exit. We've known it from the beginning. So, yeah, I've been done with this for a while.
I personally would say UCF. I think this team died in Orlando when they lost that game. I don't think they ever came out of that the same. The only thing that came out of that was Furphy starting. And that's not why the team died at that point. But I just think losing that game just completely, I think Bill looked at the team differently after that because the whole soft narrative came into play. And, like, Bill never thought they were ever going to lose that game, I don't think. And I don't think anybody on that team, I think that was just a surprising loss, and they just responded from it really poorly the rest of the way.
Yeah. I'm just kind of thinking about just the roster construction. Was a team with DeJuan Harris, KJ Adams, and Hunter Dickinson really 3 people who don't shoot 3-pointers? Was a team like that ever really going to do damage in this modern era? Like, I don't know.
It's going to have to next year. I think those 3 are going to run it back in the starting lineup, honestly. I think it's that, yes, like that, it does not work in the modern era, right? But the construction of the team around that also doesn't help elevate it whatsoever. Like, honestly, having McCullough in that, like, Kevin's kind of a ball stopper, like, yeah, he's going to be your guy, your Ochai, your Jalen. Those guys, especially Ochai, really played within the offense. There was a lot more Kevin ISO than there was Jalen ISO or Ochai ISO of the years prior. And Kevin is a worse ISO player out of the 3, So I think that didn't help. And then, El Marco, the way he plays was never going to complement the other 4, I don't think. Like, I don't know if Kansas thought they could turn him into a spot-up shooter, but that's not really what he was in AAU. He was a combo guard. I get buckets on you. Let me take you to the basket. We started to see a little bit of that with the mid-range towards the end of the year, but that was never the answer. Furphy, yes, Furphy does work nicely with these guys, but not alongside a McCullough or El Marco, where McCullough's stopping the ball and trying to take ISO, shooting mid-ranges, and he's not a spot-up shooter either. And Timberlake was a complete flop. And so the only thing you can look for is why was this roster like this is Arterio. And, everything that happened with Arterio, he doesn't even put the jersey on when it matters, whatever. But a player like that, who is a guard who can really, really shoot it,
would have plugged in so many holes. So many holes.
It's still too many. So I think, like, if you're going to run it back, I don't want to get too much into it, but if you're going to run it back with DeJuan, KJ, and Hunter, your counterpoints have to be a different style of play than El Marco or Timberlake.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to talk now about one of Self's comments after this Gonzaga game. that a lot of people really kind of shit on him for on social media and stuff. So this is Self was basically asked. Let me get the exact question here, but okay, let's see. Yeah, so he was this was the question. Vahe Gregorian of the Kansas City Star, I believe, asked us. He said, I'm sure this will stick with you. Is it something you feel like I got to start thinking about next season, or did you absorb this for a little while? And Bill Self's response was, I think for the last month, I've been thinking about next season, to be honest. Not in moments during the game, but obviously we had 8 guys on scholarship that were healthy there late. Injuries are part of the game. That's no excuse, but we could have done a much better job as a staff of putting more guys out there that we could play. Like, let's be honest. Elmarco Jackson and Jamari McDowell should never have played on this Kansas team. They like in the roles that they did. Like Elmarco should have been probably a guy that was a rotation guy, like 8 to 10 minutes, and he was asked to start right away. So also continuing from Self, he said the thing about it is in basketball, early on you can play through some things, but over the course of the season, there's a grind that goes with it and bodies get run down. It's all part of it. When you don't have as much firepower, or maybe that you've had in past years, it certainly showed this year. He's just speaking facts right there.
There's no firepower. Like, you're right. Elmarco was not going to start. And then off the court things happened. Jamari was not supposed to, like Bill said before the season, I would love if Jamari could even crack the rotation. Jamari was playing big minutes in the second half of the second round of the NCAA tournament. Probably not what Bill had in mind for Jamari year one. It's just, and the scholarship reduction sucks. You have Clements on the roster and he's redshirting. So that's unfortunate. You literally only have 10 or 11 guys who can go on the court and only 7 of them have scholarships. Like, the first part of what he said is right. There has to be more guys who can just play next year, right? Like, no offense to Jank or Wilder or Pat Cassidy, but they can't play, right? They're not good enough to play. That's what Bill means. We don't have enough guys who were really, really good in high school or really, really good at whatever school. We just had 7 or 8 basketball players and then vibes, right? No, you need 10, 11 basketball players before you get to the vibes guys. And that's what he's saying. And it's tough because there is a scholarship reduction because of the IRP. So that's just another extra challenge that Bill's got to go through.
Yeah, it is challenging, but I agree with Fran Fraschilla. We talked about this once before on the podcast, but basically what Fran said on ESPN is that I believe it was the Houston game that he said this when Kansas was getting absolutely worked on the road. He basically said that this will never happen to Bill Self again. He will have 8 to 9 starters next year. And I think he's right. Jackson, Kansas lost by 20 plus points 4 times this season. 4 times. KU had only lost by 20 plus 4 times since 1920. And if you go back, I believe it is 17-18, it'll be 5 times that they have lost by 20 plus since 17-18 before you get to this year. They got blown out 4 times. Like, blown out. Bill Self is, in my mind, like, after the season, I would be embarrassed if I was Bill Self.
Yeah.
I would be a little bit embarrassed.
100%.
And the same thing, Bill Self being really embarrassed, getting absolutely destroyed in his final game of the regular season. The last time that happened was USC. What did Kansas do the next season, Jackson?
They won the national championship.
They won the national championship. Bill Self was pissed. He said after this, like, yeah, we can address some things through recruiting. For us to be a team that really has a chance to be a national contender, we need to get a bit more athletic. We need to get longer and bigger. And what did Bill Self do? He went out in the portal. He got Remy Martin. He got Jalen Coleman-Lands. He buffed up what his nucleus was. And he went out and won a national championship. I would be surprised if Kansas isn't in the Final Four next year. I'll lock it in now. I'll be surprised.
I want everybody to understand that Bill going through the portal and beefing up does not mean replacing the starting lineup. Because just like that USC loss into the Natty season, Kansas returned 4 starters. And yeah, Bill got that roster nice, and there were some studs on it, but not guys that are going to come in and steal existing guys' starting places. So the guys that Bill's going to go out and get, they're going to play the 2 or the 3. They're not going to be playing the 1 or the 4 or the 5 because those spots are locked up. However, that doesn't mean that Kansas cannot get immensely better next year. Just imagine the difference. Okay, you have DeJuan, KJ Hunter, right? Imagine the difference between the 2-3 of 2 guys that can absolutely light it up. One of them can take you off the dribble. Like, that's not even a world where that happened at all this year. And one of those guys could be Johnny Furphy, a whole year under Bill Self, a whole fresh year in the program, another year to get better, stronger. Like,
He's gone.
There's a lot of things that can happen, even if Bill does return all 4 starters. That does not mean the rest of the roster can't get immensely better. And that's exactly what happened when USC took it to him. And Sam, I love your point because you're absolutely right. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. Just doubt Bill Self again. Do it. Please.
Bill Self is a gangster. He's a gangster, Jackson. And he is 61 years old. He has at maximum 9 years of coaching. Coach until you're 70, maybe. If I'm Bill Self, I desperately want that 3rd title. Like, I want it so bad, and I will do anything. I would do anything to get it. And I think we are going to see the next 1 to 4 to 5 years. We're going to see how much of a gangster Bill Self really is. I'd be scared. It's over. Like, Bill Self isn't messing around anymore.
He's retiring with 3 titles. He's retiring with 3 titles.
I agree. Well, all right, y'all. That's all we have for this first part. We'll be back at the under 4. Jackson and I will both give our favorite moment of the season. Stay tuned with us.
The best month of the year is here, which is why you need to know that we are now partnered with BetMGM. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 all through the NCAA tournament. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use the bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not that bet hits. Here's the best part. All you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your hard-earned money. This is how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you get up to $1,500 in bonus bets, regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Most importantly, we do have some fun stuff coming for the conference tournaments and especially for the NCAA tournament. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boost, and what I love the most, a nice parlay boost for anything you could possibly imagine betting on in the NCAA tournament, from odds and getting an at-large bid to Final Four futures to the highest seed to make to the Sweet 16. I'm calling it right now. BetMGM is the king of the prop bet for your March Madness needs. So go download the BetMGM app, use the code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request: the best way to support the Field of 68 and our content you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the pod, like and share the YouTube videos, tell your friends about us. It helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast. Jackson and I are back here, and we're going to give our favorite moments of the entire season. And I'm just going to start here, going to go right into it. Playing UConn in Allen Fieldhouse this year, that's not just one of my favorite moments from this entire season. That's probably, like, I will remember that game and just the crowd, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Like, I literally am. Like, that atmosphere I will remember for a long time. Just how turned up Kansas was on the court, how turned up the fans were. Like, legitimately, Jackson, going into that under 16 timeout, like, people, you could tell in the stadium that people were like exhausted and like catching their breath. Like, people were, you looked around and people were chugging waters, like everybody was breathing heavy because we were going crazy. Like we were going nuts that game. I haven't been in an environment like that. I don't think I will again in my life because that was special. That's my favorite moment. That's probably my favorite moment besides Kansas winning the national championship and being courtside for that of my college career was that UConn game. So that's what I'm gonna give it to.
Shit, dude. I thought the Houston game was better than the UConn game, honestly. Straight up. Big 12. Like, conference games will always mean more. Like, they just will. But the fact that UConn was the reigning champs and likely the favorite to win again this year, like the gravity of that moment was like, especially in like non-conference games like that don't happen. So the fact that that even exists is awesome in itself. And then the game lived up to it. But the Houston game, I would go with that as my favorite. Just because that was at that point, we were kind of already this season, but still 5-2 in the Big 12 and only one game back. And Houston had already taken we are literally the best defense in the country. You will suffocate and die against us. And we have the best point guard in the country. So they had already been like their number, like Houston is the best team in the country, blah, blah, blah. Coming to Allen Fieldhouse for the first time as a Big 12 member. And Sam, Kansas just stomps on him. They just stomped on him. And it was great. And everybody was healthy. And they just destroyed him. It was one of those games where, unlike the UConn game, where that was more of like just hype and it was a great game, awesome energy. The Houston game was like Kansas was winning so much and crushing them that it was like a party. And everyone was just hanging out like, we made another three. No way. Let's jump on each other. It was mayhem in there. And that was the last time in the season where I was like happy, I guess. Because now Kansas is first in the Big 12. They're back up into the top 10 in the AP. And everyone's excited, and then it all went sad from there, Sam. So
you're not happy, Jackson? Are you saying you're not happy right now?
Currently, no. I'm not happy, Sam. I'm not happy that the school I cheer for got 20 balled in the tournament again. I mean, goodness gracious.
I just really wanted to play Purdue on Thursday, Jackson.
I think they could have given Purdue a good run because it's a week of rest. It's a week of Bill in the lab.
Never
Hunter,
know.
historically in the Big Ten at Michigan, kind of shits on Edey. I'm not gonna lie. Go look at some of those games. Like, Gonzaga plays really fast though, and Kansas doesn't. Tough to play two super fast-paced teams in 30 hours of each other while having 7 guys already. Man.
Well, that's all we have for y'all today. We will be back with another episode talking about kind of the roster construction next year, who we expect to go, who we expect to stay, who we might expect to bring in, what types of players from the portal, who from the portal. We'll go all into that on this next episode. So make sure you guys are staying tuned with us. We'll probably have a few more episodes coming out, even though Kansas season is over. So make sure to stay tuned. We'll see you